to the Beauties and Beasties podcast with Alex and Sean.
Hello. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm okay, thank you. As once again, I am Sean's altered ego.
We need it. It's like Jekyll and Hyde, isn't it? But which one are you, the Jekyll or the Hyde?
I'm not sure, actually. Which one's the good one? Which was the bad one?
That requires some voting, won't it? But there we go. Oh, well, it's good to have you on this evening.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. It's been a busy week for us this week, for all of us.
Have you noticed an uptick in rodents? Because of course the MPTA put out that banner, was it last week before, saying with all of the increased groundwater, increased risks of flooding, expect more rodents in your area from displacements. Have you found an uptick in rat activity?
Not specifically. We've been bed bugging this week, really.
Okay.
So we've noticed a definite downturn in wasps and hornets, which actually, although we haven't done quite so many, it's always a bit of a relief, to be honest, because then you can get on with routine. I know that sounds a bit blasé, but you can get on with routines and making sure all the cycle's finished. So it's been a little bit quieter this week, and I'm sure all technicians get fed up with wasp nests at the end.
Things, isn't it? You kind of pray for a good wasp season because it's nice, quick, easy money that you can then spend on shiny new things for the company. But at the same time, it's got to be manic. I used to know a guy who worked for the council called Garrick, and he would do 20, 30 plus in a day. He would literally non-stop. He'd start at 5 o'clock, he'd finish at 6, 7, just as the sun went down. It was just, bosh, bosh, bosh. You must have literally been driving past, lance in hand, didn't even put the car into park, just and then back out again. Invoices in the post. So, I mean, that was absolutely mad. But then again, Garrick, I might tell you stories about Garrick one day. I haven't seen him for a long time. I hope he's doing all right. But he was crazy. I mean,
well, they're definitely not going to be 20 a day next year.
You reckon?
No, yeah.
See,
wonder why.
This could be well, okay. There might be the wasps. There might just not be the demand for them.
Well, there might not be when you've got to tell them that we can't guarantee it this year. We might need to come back and charge you again.
But it's one of those things, isn't it? You buy cheap, you buy twice. You fold it into your cost equations, and it ceases to be a one-part treatment as it always has done, and it becomes, becomes like any other routine. It's a call out and follow up.
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe
we'll get there. We'll work it out.
It'll be a change. It'll be something fun. Of course we will. Otherwise, it's all going to go horribly wrong. I think I mentioned in the last one that I'd ended up doing a ground nest the other day. I don't know if I told you guys this story. I did a ground nest, and basically what happened was I ended up putting the way I end up doing ground nests is I'll use a dib it in the floor, basically follow the tunnel down until I find the nest, and then treat through the hole that I've made with the dibber directly into the nest, rather than trying to fire it down the hole and hoping it's a straight run into the nest. But this one was in a root bundle, and the actual nest was only about 3-4 inches away from the actual tunnel entrance. So the first dib of the dibber went straight through the envelope. And suddenly there was so many wasps in the air. I mean, it wasn't just one or two. It's like the entire nest en masse unfurled. And I was stood there stunned for half a second, like, huh? Like,
we've definitely done more hornets this year.
You reckon?
Yeah, definitely. We've definitely done more hornets than other years.
It'll be interesting to see as well, because a lot of folks don't get hornets. They kind of phase out around the Midlands, but I saw more people this year further north saying that they had dealt with hornets. They tended in classically to be a more southern type. Southern.
Southerners.
Hugh,
Yeah.
you're further south than any of us.
Well, yeah, no.
Just because you're out west doesn't stop you being a southerner. Just
Sort of that way.
sliding off the side. Yeah. You just do well. Okay, let's not get into that. But
No, we won't.
we could do. I mean, very quickly before we bring our guest on, of course, we're going to be talking this week about recruitment. We're going to be talking about taking on new members of staff, and we've spoken about this briefly before. But you've been in this position. I've been in this position of taking on staff. What was the main? How hard did you find it? I mean, admittedly, one of your members of staff is family, which makes life a bit easier. But I mean, with the other guys in your team, how hard was it to try and find them?
Yeah, pretty hard, really. Yeah, it wasn't easy. We were lucky that with one person that another company had a change of hands, and so we were lucky finding them. We were very lucky getting them. And the other person was we came up trumps both times. We were very lucky to get them, both of them. But the actual process was was a little bit tedious. It really was. A lot of people, as soon as they knew that they had to have a DBS check, didn't go any further. One of the guys that we did interview, who was a really nice guy, but neglected to tell us that he'd been on tag. And it was a bit like, I think that's a deal breaker there, He was really nice, and we'd like to have given him a chance, but because he didn't tell us. We came to the interview and I met him, and it was something you get that feeling, don't you? There's you're hiding something there. Oh yeah, I was on tag. Oh, what was that for? Oh yeah, I had a bit of a scrap in a pub. And I'm like, you're not quite telling the truth, are you there?
Well, it kind of speaks to, I don't know. It's a bit of a sort of like, is that a reflection of industry that's, let's not pick at that scab, shall we?
No.
But no, not at all. But yeah, as you say, generally speaking, a lot of the folks we have in our industry are absolutely diamond people. They're salt of the earth, doing jobs that most people consider to be either dangerous or just undesirable. So it's got to be a weird recruitment process, hasn't it?
Wonder why that is in the UK, because when we have our American friends on, exterminators or pest controllers are seen or appear to be seen in a different light in America than they are in the UK. And it's like, I wonder why that is. Maybe things over there can kill you more. So,
yes, exactly that. Maybe we just need some dangerous animals. No, let's not have that at all.
I think the other thing is, I think when somebody said, I mean, I don't mind being called a rat catcher, because that's exactly what it, does what it says on the tin. But when you do actually start explaining to people that you've had to do this training and you've had to do that and you've had to take this exam, and oh, by the way, there's such a thing as a field biologist, people are like, huh? Field bio? What? We just kill stuff, don't you? Like, and maybe it's the fact that we're not advertising our credentials well enough. I don't know. Or
I'll tell you what, this is a perfect opportunity, I think, to bring in our guests to talk about how we do frame ourselves as an industry to that wider pool of recruiters, to that wider pool of not recruiters, but that wider pool of potential employees, and actually how we might sort of turn that lens on ourselves to change the way in which we sell our businesses and ourselves and our services to grow, because we are an industry of micro businesses. We are an industry of individuals who are all, it's like an armada of ships, all loosely going in the same direction. So let's bring him on. So without further ado, here he is. George. Hi, George. How you doing?
Hi,
Hi,
Alex.
George.
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good.
We're doing good so far. Looks to be. I'm really excited about this evening because I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of value for everyone involved to talk around this issue, because we've seen, and just a little bit of background before we ask who you are and how you got into this. For a while, I used to sort of like host on my website, just a free jobs board, and it was definitely more jobs than it was people looking for work, and so there does seem to be an issue with recruitment within our industry. There does seem to be an issue with people finding technicians, and I think a lot of people struggle and then give up. And we've seen a couple. I know that we've had Kelly Farrant, who's a long-time listener, drop some comments in for us to go over later on, but he's been having an absolute nightmare of a time getting someone to help with his business. So before we get into the actual sort of like meat of it, George, who are you?
Hello. So I'm a relative newcomer to the industry. I'm in my 5th year now of recruiting in pest control and bird control. We have a business called G&L Recruitment, which is myself, George, and my colleague Liam. So it's just the two of us. So I understand what it's like as a small business, and as you mentioned, Alex, we are an industry comprised of yes, some large and well-known brand names, but the overwhelming majority of people that I speak to are running small businesses, and staffing is a key. I mean, you mentioned Kelly there, a key challenge, and it definitely does, as you also mentioned, relate to the fact that there is an imbalance at the moment in terms of the supply of suitably qualified individuals, of which there's some limitations, and the demand, which is exceeding that supply. And it does lead to quite challenging situations for businesses where that next step in terms of their growth and development hinges upon growing the team and resourcing the work and servicing the clients and customers, and providing that service that they're so passionate about. So yeah, I've absolutely loved it. I've worked in recruitment more broadly for 12 years, and pest control and bird control for coming up to 5 years now, and it's been really enjoyable. Excuse me. As an industry, I think we have passionate people. I think we have people who are genuine, who are motivated to do good quality work, and again, that ties into what you're mentioning there around perception. And I think there is a perception issue. I think there is a lack of understanding amongst people outside the industry who we might seek to attract into the industry, that there are really fulfilling careers here to be had in this world, that there's accredited qualifications to gain, career paths and development opportunities, and it's a very entrepreneurial industry as well.
Yes, I was just literally about to say that, which is usually when, let's say you have, and we see it all the time in pest management, medium to large size business gets snaffled up by one of the major servicing companies, acquisitions all the time. And then when the people leave, they either leave to join another servicing industry, or they go and set up on their own. And you don't really see that in many other industries. You don't get sort of like small, you pick a business, you don't get a restaurant going out of business and suddenly, all of the chefs go and decide to make their own restaurant somewhere. No, they go and find work elsewhere. Some of them might want to go and start their pub, but overwhelmingly, when we see these mergers and acquisitions, the technicians that come out are either instantly absorbed into the other servicing companies, or they set up on their own. And I can't think of many other industries where the ability to set up your own business is quite so so long as you have the confidence to do it, quite so readily available. And I think a lot of people will go down that route first before they decide to go and work for someone else, especially a 1 or 2 man team, where they might feel as though, the risks of joining a 1 or 2 man team are greater than the risks of being your own boss, so to speak. So do you find that a lot? Do you find a lot of people, you say there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit in that. Where is a lot of your resource pool coming from in that case for recruitment?
Well, I think you quite rightly mentioned, and we've seen it, haven't we, particularly over the last couple of years in the industry, huge amount of acquisitions, a lot of the established small to medium-sized businesses being incorporated into larger groups. And when that happens, there's often people in those businesses who are almost prompted by that to take that leap. And it is a risk, and for anybody, I think, to leave behind the security of a set monthly wage, to start a business and to embark on something is challenging. But what I have certainly picked up upon is those conversations that I've had with people who have basically said to me, I'm going to give it a go myself. But I've got your number, and if I need to come back and seek employment, I'll give you a call. Very few of them do. Very few do. Most of them seem to succeed in what they're doing, and it's fantastic to see. And I think that is something which it certainly ties into the perception of the industry for prospective entrants that this is a world with, and I mean in the nicest sense, a low barrier to entry as regards starting a business, i.e. once you have the knowledge, once you have the expertise and credibility, there's relatively little stopping people from starting a business in this field, versus I think other sectors and industries whereby if you work if you work in car manufacturing, you're very unlikely to start your own car manufacturing business, versus if you work in pest control, there's a well-trodden path of success of people that have gained experience with employers, and then subsequently launched their own business. So I think for those people with that sort of mindset, certainly an industry that they should be considering.
So do most people like that you so you have a bank of people, do you, that come to you and say, either I want to be a pest controller, if something crops up, can you put my name down, or they're existingly working for somebody at the present time and say, I want to jump ship, can you keep my name in the bank? Which is the bigger pool then?
The candidates that I deal with are exclusively people who have prior experience in the industry, unless there's an instance where a particular client asks me to seek trainees, and in those cases I'd seek people from other backgrounds wishing to enter the industry. But it's almost exclusively people that have got a working background in pest control and bird control. And for a lot of them, it's a long-term watching brief, i.e. they're people who currently have a job, are not proactively job seeking, but would be interested were the right thing to come up, which could be any manner of factors. It can be people who have got their eye on that next bit of career progression. And for a lot of those individuals, the path to that could be internally. But obviously that's dependent upon the requirements that their employer has. So sometimes it has to be externally. If they're, a very good senior technician, their next roll up is service manager, but their employer already has a service manager and no plans to need another one, then for that individual, the career progression is likely to be externally for them to move forward in their career. So
is it normally about moving up the ladder or moving up the pay scale?
No, to be frank, money talks, particularly for technicians, it's often a case of people saying to me, look, I feel like I'm doing a good job. I haven't had a pay rise for some time. I have asked for that pay rise. My employer's told me that that's not possible. What should I be being paid? What does the market say that the salary should be for my role? And if that's somebody who, I'll give an example this week without mentioning anyone's name, technician in London, level 2 technician, his current salary is 28,000. I know that lots of companies pay between 32 and 34, and he's looking for a pay rise. That's the kind of person that I typically deal with day to day.
Okay, I mean, and it's interesting you mentioned sort of like the internal external of that, and the entrepreneurial part of it, because I'm fully aware, having run my own consultancy, there is a world of difference sometimes between running a business and at the same time being a technician, and just being a technician and getting a wage. That there is a significant reduction in stress by doing what you do, enjoying what you do, not having to worry about setting up, you don't have to worry about PAYE anymore. You don't have to worry about making sure all your insurance documents are in place. You don't have to worry about, the 100 other things that get in the way of doing a good day's work at the end of the day. So there's a lot to be said about joining a team of people, joining a company of people, in the sense that you can get back to focusing on what you really enjoy. And if you really enjoy running a business and being master of your own ship, absolutely. I loved it as well. It was one of those things that, your successes are your own and your failures are also your own. And there's a huge amount of empowerment in that. But I think a lot of people probably do not realize the stress potentially of running a business when they go into that entrepreneurial
nothing
mindset.
like laying there at 12 o'clock at night wondering if you're going to be able to pay the wages, or have you measured that fly screen correctly, that you just spent 500 quid on, and is it going to fit? And whereas if you're a technician, it's like, well, if it doesn't fit, does it? It's not my problem, is it? So there's a definite difference.
Huge difference. And I certainly wouldn't suggest that it's for everyone. I think all I would say is there's a lot of examples of people in the industry who have proven that it can be done. So for those, and it's not for everyone, but for those who are of that mindset, there's opportunity there in the sector to do that. For others, and this applies to the overwhelming majority of people, it's about an enjoyable job, secure employment, and and doing a good job and having that job satisfaction, and working as an employee, and that brings a lot of people a lot of success and enjoyment.
I mean, I'm going to bring up before, because I've got a load of questions, and I have no doubt that Hugh has just as many. But Terry's made a good point, and it's a bit of a lengthy point, but it's probably a good starting point here, which is, he says that the biggest drawbacks with this industry is like any other, it's decent pay. Why have all the responsibility of pest control when I can just earn as much filling shelves at Tesco's, for example? We are also too closely linked to the cleaning catering services, and we've lost the freedoms that we used to have. In larger companies now, all vehicles and phones are tracked. He remembers the days when he scheduled his own calls, planned his own routes. Now it's all done by a computer, by an LOM, or your direct area manager. So do you think some of those reasons are some of the reasons that we are struggling to attract people into this industry as well? As Terry says, or do you believe there's ways around those, and it's we can it's a fear, but it shouldn't necessarily be a block, a roadblock?
I would agree with that. I think certainly in the UK, pest control is a mature and in the nicest sense saturated marketplace where there is very strong competition for work. And I think that as a result of that, people running businesses in pest control are compelled mainly to compete on price to win work. And if you're not willing to do it for a certain price, then another provider will be. And I think that obviously trickles down to the point that was raised there regarding the pay that technicians can achieve. And yes, look, I think if people, if there's somebody out there looking for a field to enter and they are overwhelmingly motivated by money and earning potential, then perhaps there are other fields that would be more aligned to that sort of approach. But I think the question there was suggesting, why would I want to do this when I can get paid a similar level of remuneration to stack shelves? I think you have to look at the the pride in the job, the enjoyment of the work, but also, I think that there is good potential to earn more than in those type of jobs. And I think that comes down to the individual. If a technician is just happy to do the bare minimum and just get by, then they probably won't earn too well. If they're very motivated and interested in what they can bring to the table as well. I think any technician who's going to their employer saying, can I sell some services? Can I bring something to the company? It's unlikely that employer is going to say no, and that's where the money is, to be honest. Servicing stuff, yes, that pays a certain level, but it's the people that earn a lot of money in the industry, in my experience, are either bringing some as employees, are either bringing some technical knowledge and expertise that's not widespread, or they're people that can win business and develop relationships with clients and customers and bring something to their employer that the employer doesn't already have. If your focus and role is just servicing what your employer already has, your earnings are always going to be capped. If your approach and mindset is, what can I bring to the table, then there's a higher ceiling for that.
I think the thing is that, like Terry says, that the industry has changed, but it hasn't changed for change's sake. I can remember going back, Terry mentions about the phone thing. Yes, we used to have a bag of 10p coins that we used to keep in the van. And you used to know the phone boxes that you'd have to phone the office once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And if anybody missed that phone call, then that's tough luck. But as time's gone on, you couldn't do that if you wanted to, because there aren't any phone boxes. So it's just the way technology's moved on, isn't it? It's not necessary. And the same with trackers. It depends how that employer uses that tracked information. Are they tracking you to say, look, you sat there for 5 minutes. What were you doing for those 5 minutes? Or are they using them to think, oh, a call's just come in and Jim's in, I don't know, EX15. Oh, that call's in EX16. He can go and do that. Or are they looking at it to hound you to death? That's just an employer problem, isn't it? And if you're being tracked for that reason, you may want to think about moving somewhere that's a little bit more pleasant to work.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna wheel back to something you said a little bit earlier, which I really liked, which is this is not a job, it's a career. And if you approach it in the right way, it's a career with some fantastic opportunities for upward movement. There's most folks believe that all you need to do is get your basic ticket and you're away to ride. But actually, away from the qualifications, there is specializations within this industry. You've got pest and bird control there. There is a dozen different routes. Pest control is an umbrella term which is loosely held together by the words rat and mouse. There are some out there who are specialists in doing nothing but bed bugs. I used to know one guy who did nothing but bed bugs in Edinburgh, because he would follow. He had he would go and do all of the hostels and hotels where you had hen parties and stag do's up in Edinburgh, and he that was his all he did. another one of mine, does exclusively bird work and bird control. There is so many opportunities for, a career and a specialization. And I just don't think that people outside this industry quite realize how diverse the opportunities are for that. So, I mean, and that kind of brings me then on to the next question, which I'd love to discuss, which is, where, if we are not poaching, if people aren't coming laterally, coming to you laterally from inside the industry, what is the greatest pool that you've found so far for people outside the industry? Where have you found, is it the gamekeeping community? Is it the farmers? Is it graduates finishing university? Is it people who have done ecology or conservation? I mean, where are we finding the new people into this industry? Where are they coming from?
It's an interesting question, and I'd have to be honest and say I wouldn't claim any massive expertise on that, purely because the nature of what I do day to day is, as I mentioned, dealing with people, and from a candidate's perspective, dealing with candidates who do have prior expertise and work experience within the industry. But on those occasions where I have been tasked with seeking trainees and entrants from outside of the industry, you mentioned gamekeeping. I've found that to be a fantastic pool of people, particularly in terms of guys who have an aptitude for work like bird proofing. Generally, if you can put up a pheasant release pen, you can put up some netting or spiking or post and wire, obviously with some training and learning. But personally, I've found more success in seeking those guys and girls with hands-on practical aptitude, as opposed to graduates. Now, I mean, Rent-A-Kill is a good example of a company which proactively hires large quantities of graduates. I kind of question why, to be honest, because in my experience, the retention of those guys isn't the best. A lot of them tend to be moving on and leaving, and I think we have to be a bit careful not to missell. I think, and I think that's possibly a challenge that some of those companies face when they're taking on graduates, to position the role of a technician as a science graduate role. I think is a little bit of a stretch, to be honest, in terms of just ensuring that what we promise entrants to the industry is in line with what we can then deliver in terms of the nature of the work and the role itself, in terms of retaining those guys. So personally, I've had more success with people from a wide variety of backgrounds, but typically I would say hands-on interest, hands-on work experience and background. But overall, I think far above and beyond any sort of experience requirements as regards trainees, it's the personal attributes and work ethic, desire, willingness to learn, these sorts of things.
Before we get into that, just because this is something, and I want to, but before you give me the full example, I mean, Hugh, if you are hiring, what's more important to you to look for in a candidate? Experience or personality and initiative, let's say?
To us, again, we were really lucky. One of the guys we took on had 25 plus years experience, and we already knew that he was really good. So that was just a no-brainer. Otherwise, it would be somebody that's got good communication skills. Doesn't matter, actually, it didn't matter the experience, because we were prepared to train them anyway, having trained other people before a lot. Training somebody was not an issue. So it was easier to take somebody on that we could show the way that we wanted it done. As long as they had good communication skills, they were enthusiastic, they hopefully had some, or they did have some practical skills, and just the way that they came over in the interview, really. If they can't communicate with me in the interview, or we didn't do an interview, we just met people in a pub, because we don't do formal interviews, because we want to see what they look like when their guard is down, not what they look like when they're coming to a formal interview in an office. So they're a bit like, oh, this is a bit strange. Oh, what do you want to drink? And it's to see how they would interact possibly with a customer.
Well, Matthew makes a similar point, saying work ethic, attention to detail, and the ability to adapt. I know Chris Kernegard from Pest Solutions, he does a lot of recruitment based very much on these facets over experience. Now, I'm going to ask you two questions, but one before the other. So number one, which is, George, what is your opinion? What is more important from your perspective as a recruiter? These, personality attributes, or the experience that they've carried as a pest manager? Which one is the more important? Which one is the one that you look for when you're matching candidates up?
I would have to say both. And the reason I say that is typically what I'm tasked with seeking by pest control businesses is, most commonly a level 2 qualified technician. So that would be the starting point and basis of the work that I would do, would be to work backwards from a pool of people who have their level 2 and have experience. However, and I'll explain a bit more about this. It's an interesting dynamic at the moment in the industry, and I mentioned earlier we have a supply and demand imbalance at present. So there are more jobs, significantly, in my opinion, more jobs open for level 2 techs than there are level 2 techs. So as an employer and recruiter, there are certain instances where you can't necessarily be quite as picky and selective as you would like to, because once you've begun with a starting point of we're only considering people that are level 2 qualified, if you then start adding too many additional criteria beyond that, you soon find that your talent pool is down to an unsustainably low level. But in an ideal world, for businesses that are hiring, you'd like to be seeking people who are 10 out of 10 on both of those. But I think there's always compromises to be made and balances to be struck. And where I found quite a lot of success in the past in instances where it's been challenging to actually find those level 2 qualified technicians that people are after, is to look at people who have got a bit of industry experience, perhaps have gained a safe use of rodenticide certificate, and have an excellent attitude, willingness to learn, and going to that employer and saying, listen, there's somebody here who doesn't actually meet the criteria we discussed. They're not level 2 pest management just yet, but what they are is extremely enthusiastic, willing to learn, and they have that initial grounding in the industry. And a lot of those guys have gone on to do really, really well in those businesses. So it's I think from an employer's perspective and mindset, definitely advantageous to be open-minded on the credentials and criteria that they're requiring from candidates in return for excellent attitude, willing to learn, keen, on time, turns up for work, all these things which years ago would have been the norm, but perhaps amongst my generation and younger people, not quite as good as they once were. So it's definitely important to consider both.
The answer is going to be obvious, but for somebody coming into the industry, it's a no-brainer, really. Would it be better for them to try to take some sort of qualification on their own, do you think? Or try even just a safe use of rodenticides, just to get that ticket under the belt, and then approach a pest control company to get the job?
Yeah, I think that wouldn't hurt. It certainly place that individual in a stronger position. Fortunately, there are quite a large number of companies that are willing to take on trainees and provide their own training programs and support people with those qualifications. So, for those people who don't have experience in the industry, who are watching perhaps or hear about careers in the industry elsewhere that are thinking of maybe getting into it, I would probably direct them towards applying for trainee jobs as a first port of call. But yes, I think if that doesn't yield what they're after, then yeah, certainly wouldn't hurt them to seek some of those qualifications themselves.
So are we going about this? And Hugh has very kindly segued right into the point I was the second question I was going to make, which is, are we doing our job recruitment posters? Are we doing our lists of wants and needs all asked about this? Are we going wrong about this? Because as you say, you look at those, and most micro businesses, they're looking for a partner. They want someone who is, ideally as good as they are, someone that they can send out on the tools, and they don't have to worry about the quality of work. They don't necessarily have to worry about these things. But with that, as you just said, is there more mileage in actually having a sit back and thinking, you know what, training, I am going to basically take someone on, I'm going to mold them, I'm going to basically show them how I want to operate. And the fact that they don't necessarily have a full level 2 isn't the worst thing in the world, because it opens up a much wider pool for me of untapped talent. And if you have a look at the Rentokils and I mustn't use names, but the large servicing companies, a lot of them, when you start, you sign a disclaimer saying that if you leave within 6 months or a year, you are eligible for all of the training costs that went into your training. These will be pulled back up. Yeah. They'll be taken out of your last paycheck, so to speak. So actually, I think where a lot of people see is there being a risk in training someone up and they're leaving, but there are ways around that. And I don't know, thoughts, just from the both of you there, am I just talking absolute gobbledygook, or are we cutting our nose off to spite our face by literally having this almost unattainable list of wants and needs from people coming into the industry?
I mean, I'll take up, because I know if Sean's listening, his steam's gonna be coming out of his ears about something in particular, and that's the fact that when we advertise jobs, the job is advertised with, you get a van. No shit, Sherlock. You get uniform. Yeah, and are they seen as benefits, or is that just something it's just part of the job? That's not a benefit, is it? That's just, of course I get a van. That's not going to bring me into the job. I get a van. So I know as the steam will be. So what things can we say to people? Or I know it's your job to recruit them, but what things could people say to try to drag that thing? Because I know that's a point that Kelly brought up. So he's right on the edge of London. Okay. And he's having problems because people are just saying, I want to go into London to work because I'm going to get 35,000. I don't want to work outside London on the less of what London wage. Whereas, but on the same hand, he's saying to him, well, you work with us, you're going to be doing 8-10 routines a day. You go in there, you're going to be wanting to be 15, 16. So is there something that they can do to try to, is it all about the money, or is it about the job as well?
There's a few points to pick up there. I'm familiar with that job that you mentioned. I've seen it, and I know somebody that the job was offered to, actually, who I'm guessing didn't take it. I think that is a particularly unique challenge, because it's Kent, and you're competing in the candidate pool against companies that are working in London, that are perhaps offering, like you mentioned there, slightly higher pay. But I would have thought, to be honest, that should really appeal to somebody who lives locally, who doesn't want to commute into London. who would be attracted by working more locally. So yeah, without knowing masses about the individual case, it's difficult to say. But I think in that respect, the locality of the work would be the key selling point I would be pushing to candidates. More broadly, in relation to job adverts, you know, it's I don't know if I should say this or not, but I read a lot of adverts and I cringe, to be honest, at how ineffective they
Say it.
Yeah.
Say it.
And well, look, I think that there's a lot of the guys, you know, that are running pest control companies are about as good at writing job adverts as I would be at actually doing pest control, which is not very. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it boils down to the fact that I often read a job advert that a company's put out there, and it's all about what they want. You know, we require this, we want that, we want, you know, we would like the other. And I won't give away all the tricks of the trade, or I'll be redundant. But,
you'll be a pest controller.
But what? Yeah, I'd be terrible at that. I think I could potentially learn. I've been trying to learn bits actually, and it's really interesting. You know, speaking to guys working out there, doing a proper job day to day, as technicians, and some of the stuff I try and pick up. But I think all I'd say on the advert side of things is you need to be thinking about who is your target audience and what's in it for them. So, you know, right at the very top of the advert, rather than not having, you know, we require this, that, and the other, I'll be thinking, you know, how can I write this in such a manner that it appeals to the reader? You know, so you mentioned Kelly. You know, if I was writing that advert, I'd have something like, you know, top line, you know, really pushing the point that this is local work in Kent, and you know, you're not going to have to do that massive commute and battle the London traffic, and you know, all this sort of stuff, and you know,
so we've got to sell it to them as much as they've got to sell it their employees to us.
100%. Yeah, because the way you need to look at it is the advert that you're doing is just to attract as wide a pool as you can. You know, you're still you know, completely within your rights and entitled to then be selective. You know, so what you want is lots of applicants and then be selective. But what I see with a lot of adverts is, you know, we're being very restrictive right from the outset, and almost saying we want this, and you know, basically saying somebody, if you don't meet all that, don't apply. You know, when you may actually find there's somebody out there who has 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 5 of the bullet points you're seeking, who's completely capable of gaining the other 1 or 2 and has a really good attitude. But if you make the job advert very prescriptive around, you know, we want this, you must have that, then you're not going to get that person come through. So yeah, it's certainly from an adverts perspective. I think that the problem that a lot of people have with adverts is they almost think, what is our formal job description and job specification for the role holder from perhaps like an HR perspective or duties perspective, and then they're putting that out there as their advert, when actually they should be 2 completely distinct and separate things. And the advert, just a sales pitch to entice people and pique their interest, and not get too bogged down in your demands of them and what you want, but more just gaining their interest. And then once they've applied, you know, at that point you're then looking to see which of those candidates that come through you know, is the most suited to consider further.
I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but I think there's going to be a lot of people who've just listened to what you've said and gone, interesting, interesting, interesting. And then when they go and try and put that into practice tomorrow, the week after, it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not as easy as that. So of course that's why we have recruiters. And with that, I mean, this leads me on to my next bit. When is, and there's 2 sides to this coin. When is the best time to start recruiting? When is the best time for your company to start looking for someone new, in that sense? there's no answer to this, but from your experience, the people that you've helped, the businesses that you've helped grow, and Hugh, please chime in with this. When was the tipping point that you decided it's a time to start growing? Yeah, sure.
It wasn't that we couldn't handle the work. It was more the fact that if one of us was sick or broke a leg or something, heaven forbid, which is actually, of course, people that know me know, that's why my son works with me, because I had a health issue. And it was like, if that happens again, let's bring somebody else on. And hopefully when if somebody's off sick, we've got cover for it. And that was the reason for us. But another chap that I used to work with, Tim, he always said to me, he said, because he grew his business, he said, there's never a right time, but you can be guaranteed if you take somebody on, you will fill their time. Because you don't turn away that flea job or wasp nest that's a little bit too far away. You just say, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. And, there have been times when we thought to ourselves, we're not going to recommend that bird job because we can't do it. We can't fit it in. So, people, I think if you can afford to do it, you will always fill up their time.
So there's two really good questions in the comments that I'm going to come back to in just a second. But George, maybe you can take it from the other side of that, which is, if Hugh's saying from a small business, that's when I've got to start looking for someone else. When do you think is the right time for someone to actually, when's the right time for them to start looking for a recruiter to find a new role? Should people proactively be looking for new jobs just to keep their skill set sharp, or I'm sure a lot of the time you're dealing with people who have just come to the absolute end of their tether and they're looking to jump ship. I mean, is there merit in having a more proactive, balanced approach to looking for work, or when's the best time from your point of view? What would you like to see people do?
It's an interesting question, and you'd be surprised actually at what I'm going to say next, which is a lot of the conversations I have with potential candidates end with me recommending that they stay with their current employer. And I think there's a lot to be said for people seeking to further their career and so on and so forth. But also the grass isn't always greener, and there's a lot to be said for being loyal to a business that's put their faith in you, and staying with that employer. But I think for those people who it would make sense to move on, that can be for all sorts of reasons. It's fairly common that, like you say there, that people have reached the end of their tether with a particular employer for whatever reason. Often I come across people who are. I think it always needs to be a fair situation and a fair balance between the employer and the employee. And there's been a lot of instances that I've come across and helped people where it hasn't been particularly fair on the employee. And what I mean by that typically is when they are trying to be loyal and are of that sort of mindset, but they're being paid so grossly below the market rate for their role that actually, their employer is the one getting a very good deal out of the situation. I had someone this year who was in touch with me seeking a new role, asked, went through all of her experience and credentials and what she had under her belt background wise. And she said to me, what is the sort of market rate salary for someone like me? And I told her the truth, which was For a level 2 technician in London, experience was sort of 32,000 to 34,000. Asked her what she was being paid, and it was about £10,000 a year less than that. And just said to her, you know, that this is a bit one-sided in terms of who's getting the best deal here, because you know you can be sure that they're making plenty of money from the work that you're doing. So, you know, that's a big consideration. I think for employers, retention is you know, much better than always thinking about recruitment. And
I just had that written down actually when you mentioned it. How do we
yeah,
keep staff? How do we keep the staff? How do we
Yeah.
keep their staff?
How do we stop people coming to you?
Yeah. How do we do you out of a job?
I think there's lots of different factors to that. One, I think, is don't try and maximize the margin you're making on them. You know, if a technician is bringing in a certain amount of money for the company, you know, and you think you can probably keep them if you pay them X, but you're not certain, but you think you probably can, pay them X plus a couple of thousand, and then you will keep them. And yes, that does eat into your margin a bit, but it's a lot cheaper than them leaving. You know, so I think that's probably where, you know, one business model that I've come across with certain companies is to try and really drill down on the staff costs and pay people, you know, whatever the minimum they can get away with is. And I think those businesses suffer because yes, it looks good on a spreadsheet and, you know, they're keeping their staff costs down, but the turnover's high, you know, and then they're having to get new starters coming in, and training costs and all the different stuff that you know, that brings in terms of expenditure. And actually, it would have been cheaper for them to just pay their guys reasonably in the first place and retain them, in my opinion.
And so, yeah, I mean, that is definitely you mentioned as well, and I want to then just circle back to a comment that Lulu's made, but you've mentioned a couple of times positioning level 2 tech. Do you find that, honestly, do you find it easier to position level 3 techs or technicians with the advanced? No. Oh dear. Right. Okay.
I mean, only because the roles that require those qualifications are fewer and further between. So there's a huge quantity of open positions at the level 2 level. When you start looking at you know, certified advanced technicians, level 3s, and people stepping into escalations roles and field biologist roles, they're on the other side of the supply and demand dynamic, because there's lots of level 2 techs who are striving to progress to that, and a finite number of positions that require it. So those jobs, to be honest, are a lot easier for me to fill than, you know, if somebody says to me, can you get me a level 3 escalations manager? Yeah, I can get you 3 or 4 tomorrow. Can you get me a level 2 technician? Quite hard. So, and that all comes down to the supply and demand dynamic in the market. Yeah.
And
so
I mean, go on,
Alex. No, I was going to say the other thing that we got to discuss is, how do people sell themselves to you? CVs.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
That's mad.
Yeah.
Because it's like this just, the reason I'm saying this pans back to Lulu's comment, which is more and more job applications these days are sifted by AIs. Okay. And might mean that, yeah, like
even
Amazon had probably
but that's Amazon, isn't it?
But, you know, larger companies, the servicing companies, a lot of, you know, these places will have an AI sift, taking the ones that they want. And if you are, you know, just trying to write a CV or do something like that, it can be very difficult. So again, this is where the skills of having someone like George really step to the fore here. So, I mean, when you're doing like this recruitment, are you working business to business, as in you already have networks into these, or, you know, are you able to position people into these larger companies because you understand how their recruitment algorithms function, basically?
To be honest, I've not come across AI in recruitment into the pest industry at all. So I wouldn't claim to have any great expertise on that. In terms of CVs,
is that because we don't need to sift it that much because there aren't that many people applying?
Possibly. I don't know, to be honest. I mean, there are a few of the biggest companies in the industry that I don't work with for various reasons, who I don't know if they do use that or don't. I haven't personally come across it. I think with the work that I do day to day, some of the candidates that I deal with already have CVs. Some of them don't, which is not actually a barrier to it for what I do, because I will help them with that, and we'll talk on the phone. And it's like anything, isn't it? If your day-to-day work is pest control, then there are certain jobs that you'll get that you can do, and it's almost second nature to do it. If I was to be sent out on a routine to do some pest control, I'd find it quite hard, right? So for these guys, writing a CV is quite, it can be, for a lot of people, they think, well, that's actually the thing that's stopping me from looking for jobs or from going for jobs, is I don't really know how to write a CV, which is where I'm able to help people. And obviously doing that day to day, it's something which comes easily in the same way that different routines come easily to the technicians. But what I'd say to people on that is that there's no need to get too bogged down in loads of detail, to be honest. And as long as you can put a fairly concise CV together to include some key information, like any qualifications that you hold, what jobs you've held at which companies, and when those jobs were. So they should be setting their CVs out with qualifications and experience, job title, employer, dates of employment, if there's specialist stuff in there, they've covered to include it. But generally, most people in the industry, when they see somebody's a level 2 technician and they've got experience at this company and that company, they'll generally have a decent understanding of what that role would have involved. So the guys writing their CVs probably don't need to be typing every single detail of their day-to-day activities onto it, and make it more of just a headline and fairly brief document showing the background they've got in the industry.
So the process is, can we just, so how do people get to know to come to see you in the first place?
Yeah.
Do I type in on the internet, I want a pest control job, can someone help me? I would, it's, how do they come to you?
To be honest, typically they don't. I come to them and approach. So my day-to-day involves approaching lots and lots of technicians, basically saying, are you interested in new jobs at the moment? Not just technicians, also surveyors and technical people and escalations managers and service managers and whatever. But it's typically me approaching them, saying, if you're ever interested in jobs, let me know, because we've got lots of different positions open at the moment. Some of them come to me, and that'll be through various different means. Some through LinkedIn, some through job applications to adverts. Some of them are people that have uploaded their CV onto different job websites. I've recently started using Facebook as well. There's quite a wide range of ways that I hear from people in the first instance. Referrals is massive as well. So because I've placed over 100 people in the industry over the last 4 years, a lot of the time it's, hello, I'm Bob, you got my friend Tim a job last year, can you get me a job? That sort of thing.
I have noticed actually in the last few weeks that another company has been firing emails to us saying, we have this technician available, are you interested? We have that technician, and it's only been recently, funnily enough. I don't know why that's suddenly been.
Not too sure, to be honest. It's an interesting sector in respect to the fact that there's not many recruiters who heavily focus on the pest control industry.
Yeah.
There are lots of companies who are what we would call generalist recruitment companies, who will just recruit for any job they're asked to, who might come onto the radar from time to time, but probably in to my knowledge relatively few who are doing it day to day. But that would be quite a typical way, Hugh, for people to seek business in my line of work, would be to email or contact prospective employers to say, look, we have certain candidates available, are you interested? But
so here's the killer question. Who pays you?
The hiring company. The hiring company. Yeah. So right. I'd never accept any payment from a job seeker at all. No. So the commercials of it are typically something along the lines of hiring company needs to hire a technician. Let's say the salary is 30,000 a year. I'm tasked with finding candidates for that position. And when one of the candidates that I've found takes the job, the hiring company is invoiced a fee, which is based upon a percentage of the basic salary that person's taking. So, if it's £30,000 salary and the fee is 15%, then that company is invoiced 4,500 plus VAT to hire that person. Which sounds like quite a lot, but lots of companies do it. Lots of companies do it, so it must make sense. And I understand why. I think because if companies do it themselves, then they're looking at lots of different expenses they're incurring through doing that, and they're probably not very good at it because they don't do it day to day. So
quite a lot of work from your side to find this pool of people, isn't there? You've got a pool of people, and unless you get them a job, you're going to sit there with no money. So
and you
get them for what you pay for.
That's right. I think the only reason that it's very difficult for companies and not that difficult for me is they don't sit there all day, every day, communicating with technicians, because they're busy running their company and doing pest control. So it's like anything.
So as we go into the final straight with this, can you give us the three big benefits of a business using a recruiter, and then the three big benefits, if you can, of a technician to use a recruiter rather than sort of go and find themselves? So first off, for businesses, why use a recruiter rather than doing it yourself? What are the benefits to that business from that perspective?
Yeah, I think the primary benefits to a business would be increasing the pool of candidates for the role that they've got, increasing the relevance and quality of those candidates, saving themselves time as well. So if you're the employer yourself and you're putting an advert out there, I mean, Hugh mentioned it earlier about the chat with the tag and different things like this. You can quite quickly find yourself committing quite significant amounts of your time that could otherwise be spent working on your business, sifting through people's CVs, meeting people who ultimately are not relevant. So a knowledgeable recruiter will be able to do that for you and ensure that the people that you're interviewing are credible, decent candidates for the role, rather than those that are perhaps better avoided. There's that, but I would say primarily from an employer's perspective, it's about increasing the pool of people. If you guys could just put job adverts up and get loads of fantastic applicants, then I'd be doing something else for a living. It's that, I think, is the dearth of the right candidates that means that companies need that additional support. And for candidates, I think it's being able to speak with somebody who can give them an insight into the different options that are open to them. All directors and managers will tell you that their company is a superb place to work at. But a recruiter who's speaking to technicians daily will have more of an understanding and knowledge firsthand from the guys on the ground, what different employers are like, and you know, which ones they can recommend. So I think on both sides it's about options for people that are seeking new jobs. Dealing with a recruiter who's knowledgeable in the industry can allow them more options in terms of different positions to consider and insight into those different positions and companies, and for employers more options in terms of the type of pool of candidates that they'd like to bring into their business.
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head there from both sides. There's a huge element of pre-qualification, isn't there? From the, you know, from the business point of view, the pool that you have is larger, but also it's largely been vetted before it gets to you. They've pre-qualified themselves against their list of criteria. And for the technicians who are looking for a new opportunity, there is that you know, that peek behind the curtain, so to speak, that you know what the different employers are like, and you can more suitably match, you know, it's, you know, not having to just work off the cover of the book. You can potentially match technicians to the right roles. Those who are looking for someone who is, you know, purely driven on numbers and money, okay, fine, that's you know, ideal for some. But others, you know, more family orientated, smaller units where it's a lot more about working as a small team, there's definitely going to be people who are more suited to that. So it's less recruitment and more matchmaking, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right.
I noticed
Tinder
that
for
you particularly put on there as well, bird control recruiter. Do you find that job hard to recruit people for, bearing in mind there's no actual qualification to be a bird control technician as such? So how would you then judge? Would that be purely on experience? Would it help that if there was a qualification?
Within that, there's two common roles that I recruit for, one being a bird proofing technician and the other being a falconer position. With the bird proofing technicians, is typically, I mean, and this applies across the board, but it is typically about aptitude and experience. There are certain qualifications and certificates and tickets that are advantageous, like IPATH, PASMA, CSCS cards, sometimes certain certificates which allow people access onto the rail network and specific site. But it's primarily, you know, what's your experience in netting, in spiking, in installing various different bird deterrent systems, post and wire. You know, do you have you used gels? What kind of clearance work have you done? All this sort of stuff. So that is, yes, it is largely experience based, and it is very challenging to find good bird proofing technicians. There are lots of good people out there in that field, but very sought after. And I think largely because that's generally where a lot of the better margins are for companies is in the bird work. And it's interesting actually, and it fascinates me. A lot of these big name businesses, they can't and don't even service their own bird work; they sub it out. And I think, why do you not just, you know, build a team of bird proofing guys internally and do it? But I don't know. They don't. They subcontract it out a lot of the time. Falconry, again, it's people that have a background working within that field typically, although sometimes it's people who have a falconry background but not actually for the purposes of pest control, then bringing that knowledge and experience to the industry and using those skills within a falconer position in a pest control business. So yeah.
Awesome. Would you mentioned, you know, bird control specialists there. Is there any other sort of like specialisms that you would focus on that you found to be a particularly good hook for technicians to get into? I mean, if a technician's looking for a new role and he wants to, or he or she wants to separate themselves from the pack, what is it that they can do to make them stand out going forward?
Yeah.
Looking for a new role, what can you do?
Yeah, I think to differentiate yourself from other technicians, there's a few different things that I'd recommend. One would be the RSPH and BPCA qualifications. So, that path of safe use of rodenticides, level 2 pest management, and then the certified advanced technician. And I know this is all a bit up in the air at the moment, but to strive for that is always advantageous career wise, and whatever level you're at, to be seeking the next step on the ladder on that side of things. In terms of experience and aptitude, proofing is something which is really sought after, and I'd definitely recommend. So any technicians out there who get any opportunity at all to get involved in any kind of proofing work, whether it's bird proofing, rodent proofing,
would it be an idea if you were doing a job to take a photo of it for your CV for the future? Just
yeah,
to build
absolutely.
up?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea, just to build a catalogue really of some of the jobs that you've worked on, and it shows pride in the job, doesn't it, as well? If you're doing some work and you're really pleased with it and you're taking a picture of it and keeping that, that's really good. But definitely, proofing is something that I'd encourage people who are technicians in the industry that are aspiring for their future career to get gain any experience that they can in that side of things. What else? I think really just to take any opportunities that come up, and I think opportunities for learning and development.
Grab everything you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. Root cause analysis is another thing I would sort of touch on and mention is, one thing that differentiates people in the industry when they're speaking to myself and when they're speaking to prospective employers is that mindset and ethos and approach around root cause analysis. And I'm somebody that focuses on actually getting to the bottom of the problem and solving it for the customer, not kick the box, tick the sheet and run on to the next job. But I've got a mindset of, right, this is what's presenting itself to me as the infestation issue, and this is where they're coming in, this is the issue, and we're going to fix that by proofing, and we're going to do all this good stuff. And I think that that kind of mindset around what is the root cause of the issue and how can we address that, rather than just treating the symptoms, is something which definitely differentiates people and helps them progress.
I mean, that's
there was
really
somebody that did a good course about that.
Yeah, I hear that he's devilishly handsome, and loved by all. Wild lies on both fronts there. But yes, I used to do a course on root cause analysis because I believe exactly as you do that it is a tool which it will really separate you from the pack. Is not just solving the issue as it stands, but drilling down and being able to solve that problem at source. And more importantly, root cause analysis is not just about solving the problem as you see it, but preventing that problem from reoccurring in the future. And when you are to a client, that is worth its weight in gold, because it stops those problems metaphorically, literally dead in their tracks. So there we go. Oh, it's been so, I mean, the fact that the chat's gone quiet is actually really good, because usually when that happens, people are just listening. So I think we've got some really good value out of today, and definitely there is enough here for both employers and employees to solidly be thinking about. And as you say, it's an industry of people who are motivated and fantastic and interesting, and we just need to get more of them in contact with one another.
There was a couple questions from Gilberto earlier, but they were technical questions about a different subject. So if you're still listening, Gilberto, if you want to put them on the Beauties and Beasties Facebook page, we'll try our best to answer them on there rather than on the podcast at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were a bit more specifically aimed at
Specific,
bird
aren't they?
control.
Yeah.
I think people saw the bird control within your title there and misinterpreted that. But no, there we go. Do you have any questions, for the wider population? Whilst you've got the opportunity, ask Hugh or I. Is there anything that you've wanted to sort of like fire back at the pest management industry? Just why we do certain things the way we do, or anything that's been playing on your mind?
Oh, I'm just trying to think now. There's lots of stuff. There's lots of stuff. I'd be interested. I mean, it's a bit off topic, but I'd be interested to ask you guys how you see the future of the industry in the UK at the moment. I mean, the reason I ask that is I see a lot of change recently, a lot of acquisitions, a lot of private equity companies who are, in my opinion, working on generally a deal cycle of around 5 years to buy a company and make it look profitable and flip it. And I see massive opportunity, to be honest, for small businesses to grow, for new businesses to start and to take advantage of some of this and be more customer focused and grow. So I don't know. Do you think we're going to see the industry become more and more concentrated in terms of a small number of players controlling more and more market share through acquisition, or do you think we're going to end up seeing more small and micro businesses filling that sort of gap?
Go on, Hugh. You've been around for the last 2 acquisition cycles, maybe even 3. Sorry, but I mean, what's your experience?
I think that when acquisitions are taking place, I think that's a great opportunity for smaller businesses to step in and provide the service that disarray, particularly during the disarray period of time when it is first acquired, could be a very good time to try to step in and show that good things come in small packages, as long as you can provide that service. That is, we have, as a small business, we are lucky that we can supply BRC standard pest control because we have our own certified field biologist, level 3 technicians, level 2 technician. So we can supply that service, and we've just recently taken on another one from a bigger company where they just can't provide the service because they just don't really care. Whereas we do care, because we are the ones that the client can knock on their front door. So I think there's a lot of chance for that when these companies do buy out other companies. Good for the companies that get bought out, but and all power to the people that are selling. But there are other opportunities, I think, for people that are in it for longer.
I mean, my perspective would be that we've seen similar cycles, but maybe not to such a extent as we have, because we've got at least two, maybe a third submarining out there somewhere, plays into the market. So classically, it used to be the big 3. Now we have an extra 2 who are global players who are investing into this. So, I mean, I think that's why we're probably starting to see a lot of level 2 techs getting snaffled up, simply because there is. But as Hugh says, there's an opportunity for when these consolidations occur, that a lot of people take that as an opportunity to leave, to try something new, either try it by themselves or to join a smaller, more a company closer to the one that they worked for previously. They've come from a 3 to 5 man business. They don't want to be part of Global Corp, and now they want to sort of like move back to a 3 to 5 man business. So there's a lot of migration. But as for the future of the industry, I think the biggest issue that we're facing is, it's hard to say. We're an industry of fairly mature individuals. You don't find a huge
Mhm.
number of pest managers under the age of 30. You find even fewer under the age of 25, realistically speaking. And so there is a fear that where is that upward movement of people going to be coming from? And so my thoughts for the future is I'd love to see some kind of future proofing to get us more recognized potentially
Mm.
by the academic world. There used to be a lot of farming and gamekeeping colleges, agricultural colleges that used to do courses in things like gamekeeping, and there are few of those you see these days. But potentially getting pest management onto that list, having people who are passionate about this industry from an earlier age, would benefit our industry. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we just continue as we have done for the last 40 years and everything's fine. But that's what I would like to see, just being able to pull from that larger pool.
Yeah,
Agree, disagree?
absolutely. I mean, I would like to see apprenticeships in the industry. I would like to see that route open to people, and I think that things like that may change. I know there's ongoing consultation regarding qualifications at the moment, and this has long been something which, because I've got a background in various industries prior to pest control, I'd always sort of thought, what we call a level 2 is really a level 3 in other industries. And are we as an industry doing ourselves down by calling our qualified professionals level 2, when in other parlance and industries they're level 3 really? If that was a bit different in terms of alignment and recognition, would that then mean that we could offer apprenticeships and have apprentice pest control technicians coming through the ranks? So I don't know if that.
Just on that subject, next week we have Graham Turner from the MPTA coming on to discuss qualifications.
We had Ian Andrews on a couple of weeks ago discussing just that very thing, the qualifications framework, and so I think we've got, as you say, Graham coming on next week to give the other big trade association UK, the MPTA's views on that. But yeah, I think it'd be so great, as you say, apprenticeships are something I think that we're lacking. I think one of the other problems with getting young people involved is van insurance, but that is something for another day. But there's got to be a way around that, as there are all things. Anyway, we've come up to an hour and a half now, which is wildly surprising to me. So I think we should probably move on to our final 3 questions. And if you've watched the podcast before, you may know what we're about to ask you. But if not, this is going to be a surprise. So do you want to go first, Hugh?
I can do. Yeah. Have you enjoyed your time on the podcast? Has it?
I'm sorry, Hugh, I didn't hear that question. Could you just say again, please?
Yeah. Have you enjoyed your time on the podcast?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. I've watched previously, and I really appreciated your invite to come on. So thank you. And yes, I have.
Good.
Yeah, and I really hope people reach out to you, because I'd like to see more small businesses succeed, grow, evolve, and it can be very difficult for the colloquial one-man bands to feel like they're making an impact, and a lot of them might feel just scared of taking that leap and becoming a larger entity that they are. But it would be great if we started to see more people have the confidence to be able to do that. So I'm very grateful for you being on tonight, and I hope that people will reach out, and at least for some people this becomes the first step to being the next big thing. This could be it, guys. This is tomorrow could be the day that you make the decision that sets you on a path to be, the next servicing company. Who knows? But there we go. So with that, give us a shameless plug, if you could.
Oh, okay. So, well, I'm always keen to hear from professionals in the industry who are looking for new roles or interested to hear about new roles, and also businesses who are looking for help with finding the right staff for their teams. The best way to reach me is to either send me an email, which is george at g&lrecruitment.co.uk, or give me a call on 07903 701 604.
So when you say G&L, was that G and A-N-D-L or G ampersand?
G-A-N-D-L. George at g&lrecruitment.co.uk.
We'll put it in the. I think
I've just
Alex
put it in the chat now. Hopefully, I've spelled that all right. I won't put your phone number in there, otherwise you might get spammed by autocallers.
You can be found on LinkedIn, can't you, as well?
LinkedIn, yeah. And my phone number's not a secret, so anyone's welcome to call me Monday to Friday and talk. It's absolutely fine.
Not drunk on a Saturday night with a kebab on a new job. They didn't appreciate me.
Sunday at 8:30. I don't want to go to work on Monday. We've all been there, haven't we? Oh dear. Right.
So the other question: is there anybody that you think that you would be a good guest or that you'd like to see on the podcast?
Yes, there is actually. So what I'll do is perhaps if I make some inquiries and let you guys know.
Yeah,
I won't mention their names now because it wouldn't be fair for me to commit, to make that commitment. But
yeah, brilliant.
Go on, drop them in it. Give us. I'll tell you what. Give us a tantalising hint as to you. Don't give names. Say what they do and see if people can guess.
Funnily enough, the person that's come into my mind is, I know we've mentioned bird proofing, but the chap that I've got in mind is, in my opinion, one of the most knowledgeable people in the country on bird proofing.
We haven't had a bird proofer, so that would be good, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
That'd be very good.
Looking forward to you tapping them on the shoulder for that. Anyway, that's been a wonderful and very swift hour and a half.
And guess what?
What?
We didn't mention.
Don't do it.
Or once.
We didn't, did we?
No.
In fact, we didn't. The big three we didn't mention. So we didn't mention bees or Asian hornets or licensing. We didn't mention them once, did we?
Jinxed it.
Jinxed it.
Yeah.
Right. With that, everyone, I'm going to wish you a good night. And
thanks, George. Thanks very much. Thank you, George.
Thank you very much.
We'll catch you all later. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.